this lesson, we're going to take a look at unemployment in a little bit more detail than the last time. Last time we talked about the civilian labor force and the not in the labor force and Peters and marginally attached workers and all that kind of stuff. In this one, we're going to get really into the weeds of different types of unemployment. So just as a refresher, right, we've got unemployed people and we've got employed people. And these folks right here, any of these characteristics, right, any one of these would mean you are employed. So you don't have to be all of them. With these, you have to be both, right? To be unemployed, you have to be not employed and actively look for a job in the last 4 weeks. So that's kind of a refresher from last lesson. Now, in the unemployed group, there are 3 types of unemployment. There's frictional, structural, and cyclical. And we're going to take a look at each one in turn. Now, the first one to understand is frictional. That's the easiest one here to actually kind of wrap your mind around. It just means that you are temporarily unemployed, right? And it's for generic reasons, right? And I'll give you some examples here for generic reasons for what those might be. That would be like layoffs, right? Maybe you were laid off, or you were fired, or you quit, right? Or maybe you just graduated and entered the labor force, graduated and started looking for a job. Now, one little asterisk here is maybe with the layoffs, as long as those layoffs are not related to something broader in the economy. So a layoff, if you've never heard that phrase before, it means that a large number of people are being separated from employment, as opposed to fired, which usually means an involuntary termination of one person. And quit means a voluntary separation from employment. So layoffs, as long as this is like just one company maybe doing this and it doesn't have anything to do with how the economy's doing, it's just that company is laying people off, then we're calling it frictional unemployment. Now, normally in the economy, you're always going to have a little bit of frictional unemployment. You want to let people leave their jobs, right? Quit, or you want to let companies fire people. So you expect a little bit of frictional unemployment. Now, frictional unemployment, an interesting aside about this, is actually something that for a long time it was a higher rate of that in the kind of normal amount of it until about the late 1990s, early 2000s, when a lot of employers started putting their jobs online and making it easier for people to apply for jobs, and when we started to see websites where we connected job seekers with employers. And that actually brought the level of frictional unemployment down a little bit because we found that people who were between jobs, right, temporarily between jobs, could quickly find a new job more quickly. Now, the second group here is called structural unemployment. And this is really changes in the structure of the economy such that the quantity demanded for the workers is less than the quantity supplied of workers, we'll say here, workers. And I could have given you a little bit more space there, I think. So we would see that that for some reason in the economy, like it's a structural thing in the economy, why there's more workers than firms who want to hire them. And there's a couple of things that could lead to that. One would be a high minimum wage, right? With a high minimum wage, you might not have very much demand for, and I'll kind of draw a little picture down here, demand quantity for that particular worker. So quantity of labor, and this is from last semester a little bit, quantity of labor, and then you have a demand for labor, and you have a supply of labor, and you have an equilibrium wage, right? The equilibrium, E star. If you put in a minimum wage, here you've got quantity supplied is bigger than quantity demanded. So we'd have a little bit of unemployment, right? Unemployment. And that's what we're talking about here, is any kind of structural thing. There's also things like robots or automation that could reduce the demand for particular workers, maybe in manufacturing. And what we call that in general is sometimes called skills-biased technical change. And in fact, it benefits certain people who have skills that are in demand, and other people lose out. And there's a very famous economist named Joseph Schumpeter who coined a phrase, creative destruction. And it's the idea that you know what, that we don't have folks who are going around shoeing horses anymore, because we have people driving cars, right? And so we don't have nearly as many blacksmiths as we used to in the United States. And that's okay. We don't want structural unemployment to completely disappear because this is the price of change, right? We have more robots, so we would assume we have more robots making cars, so now maybe we have more people whose jobs are to program the robots and design the robots. And you could see how that would bias this change, technological changes, would bias in favor of certain skills and against others, right? Kind of lower skilled positions are increasingly being automated. So now, an important thing about all of this, right? You're going to have structural. You're going to have frictional. It's inevitable. In fact, you kind of want it. You don't want it to disappear. If you add these two values together, you say we've got a little bit of frictional, a little bit of structural, you get something called the natural rate of unemployment. And this is considered kind of, we'll call it full employment, right? Full employment. And we know that there is going to be a little bit of unemployment, right? But full employment is not equal to 0%. We wouldn't want 0% because that would mean people could never quit their jobs. We could never graduate from college unless we've started a new one already, job. You'd never allow anybody to lay off any of those blacksmiths, right? So you want some level here. You don't wish it upon people, but in the sense that full employment does not equal 0. For the United States, it's probably right around 4 to, we'd say, to probably around 6%. Anything between 4 and 6 is considered full employment, a natural rate. Currently, the United States is at 3.5%, which is actually below that level. That means that we have above full employment levels. That's a good thing if you're looking for a job. A little comparison point here, European Union countries a lot of times have higher rates of natural rate of unemployment. For example, Germany, and this is going to be just an example, Germany is usually around 4%. France, just as a different aspect, is right around 8%. And Italy is right around probably 12%. And that's their natural rates of unemployment. Now, why would that be, right? Why would that be? Why would they have different natural rates? And that's because of something about the structure of the economy. And it is oftentimes because in some labor markets, it's actually a little bit harder to find a new job if you don't have one already. And that's kind of what we're looking at here. So lots of interesting articles if you're interested in comparative economics in the sense to go out and look at why do different countries have different natural rates of unemployment. And we're going to return to this concept later on in this semester. Now, beyond that, you've got a third type of unemployment. And this third type is called cyclical. It's caused by recessions. So this would be if you lost your job because of a recession, right? Caused by recessions. And this is really due to the fact that demand in a recession, demand for goods, right? This goods and services goes down. So demand for workers, right? Demand for labor. Demand for labor goes down. And if you've been laid off because of a recession, that's a different kind, right? That's not natural. And so what we find is that you've got a little bit of cyclical unemployment. That would indicate that you have a recession going on your hands. And there's some things to think about here, right? If we think about a PPC, right? And we'll kind of sketch one off over to the side here. Quick little PPC with capital goods and consumer goods. And we said you've got an economy's possibilities here. This would represent that you have cyclical unemployment, right? This would represent the natural rate of unemployment, and this would represent like above full employment. So something like 3%, right, for the United States, and this would be like 4%, and this would be like 8% unemployment. So we can use a PPC to actually kind of model levels of unemployment. We expect there to be a little bit of unemployment, and that's that idea of full employment does not equal 0. That's down here. Full employment doesn't mean 0, and that's why on the line we would expect if we're at the natural rate, then that means we're on the line. If we're below the line, it means that we have some cyclical unemployment. And a situation like now, right, we're maybe a little bit temporarily above it. And it's not always a bad thing, right? We kind of like it when people have jobs. So hopefully this helps you understand a little bit of this stuff here. One last little piece is that if you know the natural rate, and this isn't too wild and crazy. If you know that the natural rate is 5, right? And I'll do this little problem up here so you can see it. If the natural rate equals 5%, right? And if current unemployment is 8%, then I will say cyclical question mark, right? Cyclical. How much is cyclical? Well, if the natural rate is structural plus frictional, so cyclical has to be whatever there's left over, so that's 3%. So you're going to see problems maybe that'll ask you questions along those lines as well. All right, hopefully you took some good notes, and I'll see you next time.